Hey everybody, welcome back to the Harold Feinstein Studio Series. We're back again. I'm Cory Levine. I'm the studio manager here for the Harold Feinstein Photography Trust. And we're here with another edition of the Studio Series, also known as Cory and Shannon Talk About Photographs. Welcome back.
Hi everybody, I'm Shannon Pelletier, and I am a current intern for this summer for the Harold Feinstein Photography Trust, and also a current photography student, so I am ready to talk about some photographs.
All right, great. So today, the photograph that we're talking about is called Grant's Counterman. And it was shot in 1974 in Times Square in New York. And here it is. Very carefully. So this is an 11 by 14 print, and as with our previous videos, this is a print that's currently hanging in Paris at Galerie Thierry Bigignon during the show Graciously Yours, which is running through the summer. So if you are in the Paris area, we hope that you'll get to it and get to see these photographs up close and in person. If not, we have these wonderful videos for you. So let's dig into it. So Shannon, tell me, when you look at this photograph, what do you see? What grabs you?
Well, Harold often photographs people in the hustle and bustle of New York City, and Grant's was very reflective of that New York hustle and bustle culture. Writings about Harold's work in the fun hustle and bustle of the New York nighttime can be found on his blog. We'll put the link in the description below. And so here we have a photo that reflects that, especially in the background of the lights and the sign, and there's people, the signs and the people, and this worker seems to not really be included in the narrative of the fun and the hustle and bustle, but he's just a humble worker, and I feel like Harold Feinstein had a keen eye for just the most humble and quiet characters in a setting, and I think this is one of them.
I agree, and it's an interesting point you make about sort of the narrative of this photograph, where this subject is somewhat removed from in this moment from the people he's serving, the people within the restaurant, but he's also sort of connected with the photographer, with Harold, in this moment. And I think one of the things that stands out to me about this particular photograph is the richness of this subject's expression, of this man's expression, because I think it's really intricately layered. And at first glance, the sort of sideways, glance that he's making toward the photographer might indicate a skepticism or a leeriness to him. But to my mind, if you really stop and look at this fellow closely, as Harold would have, you can see that in his expression there's sort of almost a hint of a smirk, a softness to his eyes, and the raised brow, and even the bit, his hat being slightly askew, all kind of gives this more of a charm and a friendliness and a playful interaction, rather than I think what might appear initially, and what we might perceive when we think about New York City and feeling as though there's grit or hardness there. I think what Harold really captures here is a bit of friendliness and softness, and it's also a sort of a peaceful moment. He's caught this fellow amidst, to your point, the hustle and bustle, right? There's a rich diner culture in Times Square in the 50s and 60s, and that no longer exists. But amidst all of that, this fellow was standing at rest, leaning on the counter, and Harold caught him there in this sort of peaceful moment, this restful moment, and not in the midst of the scrum and the chaos of New York.
And also Harold's use of blurring his background, you can, from a photographer's perspective, you can see his aperture is open, and what that does is, we see the hustle and bustle, but we can't make it out. So because the subject is one of the only things in focus, it kind of helps the whole photograph direct your eye to him. The objects in the photograph also do that. So we see like the lighting that frames the ceiling, the borders of the room, but also the shelving of the plates and the lighting function as kind of pointers towards the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And we also see the reflection of the light on him. There's little spots of light there. Obviously, those wouldn't be lights in front of him, so to me, they are indicative of Harold having been looking through a window, and they kind of make the subject sparkle more in a way. And that sort of trait in that photograph is reminiscent to me of Lee Friedlander's work, where if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you do. His work often was involving windows, and what it does is it just adds a whole other dimension to this photograph. So not only are we looking at, the subject and what's behind him and what's behind those things and so on, and the wall and so on, but that glass in front of him that we now know is there is a whole other dimension and thing to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's a very layered image, and your point about him sort of sparkling and the way that these lights look, they're sort of have a diffusion to them, the way that they reflect off the ceiling and reflect off the window between Harold and the subject. To my mind, this sort of softness of those lights give the whole scene a kind of ethereal or otherworldly or almost heavenly kind of feeling to it. And to me, that really speaks to, it speaks to the photographer, it speaks to Harold and his larger body of work, which was, to my mind, celebratory. These photographs are individual little celebrations of what we're looking at. And I think that, Times Square at night and this bar where Harold used to go and get 15-cent hot dogs, as he's written about. I mean, this was a type of heaven. This was, he was living his life with so much joy and reverence for the moment that, the photograph really, and the lighting of it, to my mind, really elevates and brings that quality of it out.
And it's funny that you use the term ethereal too, because when I look in the bottom right corner with that steam or smoke that's going on, we've previously discussed it in Man Smokes and Diner in our past studio series video, but it also kind of does a similar thing in my opinion, where it's kind of a filter and a ethereal one at that. So I think the lights and the smoke steam have the same function in that way.
A lot of different textures and visual textures happening in this image. Well, I think that covers most of what I was thinking about this. Anything else you wanted to share with the wonderful people out there?
I think that's about it.
All right, great. Well, thanks for tuning into this installment of Cory and Shannon Talk About Photographs, or the Harold Feinstein Studio Series. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'd love it if you let us know what you think about this image in the comments, and please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like, and share this around with your friends. And we hope we'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.